Have you ever just looked out at the natural world and wondered, what are the rules? How does it all work? Well, today, we're diving deep into the hidden principles of ecology. We're going to start with just a single organism and zoom all the way out to see how every living thing is connected in this vast, absolutely intricate web of life. So here's our game plan. We'll kick things off with the individual and its world, then we'll get into the incredible strategies life uses to survive. After that, we'll see how populations grow, how different species interact, and finally, we'll put all the pieces together to see that big, beautiful, complex picture.
All right, first things first, we've got to get our terms straight. To really get the big picture, we have to start with the smallest, most fundamental building blocks of ecology.
And it all begins right here, with our main character, the organism. This is ground zero. It's the fundamental unit, a single individual living being. Could be a tiny bacterium, a giant mushroom, or, well, you.
But, organisms almost never live in total isolation. When you get a group of the same species, all living together and, interbreeding, that's what we call a population. So think of all the squirrels in your local park, or all the dandelions in a field. They're all part of the same group, interacting with each other.
Okay, now this is a really important distinction we need to make. It's the difference between where something lives and what it does. So its habitat, that's just its address. Simple enough. But its niche, oh, that's its profession. It's the unique role it plays, what it eats, who eats it, how it changes its environment. It's the whole shebang.
Every single organism is in this constant dance with its environment. It has to deal with all these non-living or abiotic factors. We're talking about stuff like temperature, how much water is available, sunlight, the kind of soil. These are the basic challenges life has to figure out how to overcome just to survive.
So how does life actually respond to all those challenges? Well, it adapts. And this brings us to some of the most amazing strategies organisms have evolved to not just get by, but to actually thrive.
One of the biggest goals for survival is maintaining a stable internal balance. We call this homeostasis. Just think about your own body, right? It works around the clock to keep your temperature right around 37 degrees Celsius, no matter if it's blazing hot or freezing cold outside. That, right there, that's homeostasis in action. So when the environment gets tough, organisms basically have four main playbooks. They can regulate their insides like we do. They can conform and just let their internal conditions fluctuate with the outside world. If things get really bad, they can migrate, just pack up and move somewhere better. Or they can just hit pause and suspend their activity, kind of like a bear hibernating all winter.
And this graph, wow, it shows those first two strategies perfectly. See that straight, flat line for the regulators? Their internal conditions stay rock solid, no matter what's happening outside. But the conformers? They're on that diagonal line. Their insides basically just mirror whatever the external environment is doing.
These survival strategies lead to some absolutely incredible adaptations. You've got physiological ones, like the kangaroo rat, which makes super concentrated urine to save every last drop of water. You've got morphological or physical changes, which is what Allen's rule is all about, why animals in cold places have shorter limbs to keep warm. And then you have behavioral tricks, like a desert lizard that just knows when to sunbathe and when to find some shade.
Okay, let's zoom out again. We've seen how a single organism can survive, but what happens when you look at the whole population? How does it grow and change over time? This is where things get really interesting.
When we track how populations grow, we see two major patterns emerge. The first is this explosive J-shaped curve. That's unchecked, out-of-control growth. The other one is this more realistic S-shaped curve, which shows growth starting fast but then leveling off. And really, the difference here is pure fantasy versus cold, hard reality. Exponential growth, that J-curve, that only happens when resources are infinite, which, of course, they never are. In the real world, populations follow that S-curve of logistic growth. They grow until they hit the environment's carrying capacity, which we call K. That's the max number of individuals the habitat can support. If a population overshoots that limit, a crash is pretty much guaranteed.
But here's the thing. Populations don't just grow by themselves in a bubble. They live in communities with tons of other species, which leads to this constant, complex dance of interaction. Like they say, no population is an island. We can actually break down all these complicated interactions with a pretty simple scorecard. A plus means a species benefits, a minus means it's harmed, and a 0 means there's no real effect. And these relationships run the gamut from total win-win scenarios like mutualism to lose-lose situations like competition. Okay, so that scorecard is a great framework, but let's bring it to life. It's time to look at some really fascinating examples of these interactions playing out in the real world.
Let's start with competition, that classic lose-lose situation. And there's a huge idea here called Gauss's competitive exclusion principle. Basically, it says that if two species are fighting over the exact same limited resource, they can't live together forever. Sooner or later, one is going to outcompete the other and knock it out of the picture. There can only be one.
And we see this in action all over the place. In some lakes in South America, flamingos and local fish are in a constant battle over the same little creatures called zooplankton. And much more tragically, in the Galapagos, the Abingdon tortoise was actually driven to extinction because goats that were introduced to the island were just way better at eating all the plants.
All right, next up is parasitism, another classic win-lose deal. The parasite benefits by living on or inside another creature, the host, which gets harmed in the process. It's a really successful strategy, even if it's a little gruesome sometimes.
And this strategy has so many different forms. You've got these clever behavioral parasites like the cuckoo bird, which literally tricks other birds into raising its babies. You have ectoparasites, things like lice and ticks that live on the outside of their host. And then you have endoparasites, like the malarial parasite, which live deep inside their host's body. But hey, it is not all conflict and competition. Let's talk about the most positive interaction of them all, mutualism. This is a true partnership, a total win-win where both species come out ahead.
Some classic examples here are lichens. They might look like one single thing, but they're actually a super symbiotic team of a fungus and an alga working together. Another vital one is mycorrhiza, this amazing partnership between fungi and plant roots. The fungus helps the plant suck up nutrients from the soil, and in return, the plant gives the fungus sugars to eat. It is a perfect trade.
So, as we zoom all the way back out, we see this incredible, intricate web. Every organism is shaped by its environment, every population is limited by resources, and every single species is defined by its relationships with others. It's this delicate system of checks and balances that's been built over millions of years. And that leaves us with one last, really big question. Seeing all this, where do we, as humans, fit into this picture?